Hi all, thanks for being with me. I want to talk about anti-Semitism again because I think that we need to be really wary of what's happening in this space and how certain aspects of the Jewish community are endeavouring to pit us against each other and to create more diversiveness, more hate, and that as a result of this, I'm fearful that Jillian Segal's report that she's given to the government is going to create more problems for the Albanese government than what they expect. In fact, to be fair, I'm quite disappointed in the Albanese government for giving such a platform to the aspect of, the wing of the Jewish community which supports Israel and what Israel is doing in Gaza. Now, as we know, this whole issue around anti-Semitism has been blown out of proportion since October the 7th, 2023. And that all of us need to be mindful that, and I'll say this over and over again, any form of hate, anti-Semitism, any form of hate towards the Muslim community, any hate at all is wrong. There's no other way of describing it. But we need to be mindful of actually what's happening on all sides in relation to this particular debate. And I'm going to present to you a Guardian article written by Louise Adler, who herself is Jewish and a journalist, and the perspective that she takes to help us to become more aware as to actually what is happening here. And so this is the other alternative, the other side to the Jewish community. And there is a group of people who support the IDF and what they're doing in Gaza and the West Banks. And then there's another group of Jewish people who are against what their government is doing. And those people not only exist in Australia and around the world, they also exist in Israel. So we need to see this proportionately, I guess, and we need to understand exactly what all of this means. So I'm going to bring you to this particular article in the written by Louise Adler, which I think is an important article for us to understand. And in this article, she says, the Special Envoy's plan is the latest push to weaponise anti-Semitism as a relentless campaign pays off. So, in other words, this particular group, so the group of the Jewish community that support what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, have a loud and powerful voice. If anybody dissents from their view of the world, then they are attacked. But fortunately, people like Louise Adler are prepared to make a stand against that version or that community that supports what happens in Gaza and the West Bank. So she goes on to say, one must acknowledge the remarkably effective Jewish community organisations in Australia behind the latest anti-Semitism report. Collectively, with their News Limited megaphone, they have successfully badgered the government of the day, cowed the ABC, intimidated vice-chancellors and threatened to defund arts organisations. With the ability to garner prime ministerial dinners, a battalion of lobbyists has gained access to editors, duchess, willingly seduced journalists, keen to enjoy junkets, and corralled more than 500 captains of industry to subscribe to full-page ads against anti-Semitism and thereby blurring political argument with prejudice and bias. It is no surprise that this relentless propaganda effort has paid off. The appointment of Jillian Segal to the Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism, routinely described as an eminent corporate lawyer, does not seem to bring scholarly expertise to the role. With respect to, one might argue that Segal's previous position as president of ECAJ and unequivocal advocate for Israel as the Jewish homeland should have disqualified her from the role. And she goes on to say, numbers have been cited as evidence of an escalation of anti-Semitism incidents that have apparently occurred after the 7th of October 2023. Of course, nuance or accuracy isn't paramount in this campaign. So, 16 students, this is worth noting, 16 students at Sydney's University, feeling intimidated by the slogan from the river to the sea, was reframed as 250 complaints submitted to parliamentary inquiry. A childcare centre that was not in fact a Jewish centre was added to the list of terrifying anti-Semitic attacks. The individuals police believe were hired by criminals seeking a reduction in their prison sentences who allegedly placed combustible material in a caravan because became a terrorist attack. The hooligans, still unidentified 7 months later, who firebombed the Adas Israel synagogue, brought out a rash of politicians to deplore the incident. She goes on to say, the publication of the Special Envoy's plan is the latest flex by the Jewish establishment. The in-house scribes have been busy. No institution, organisation or department is exempt from the latest push to weaponise anti-Semitism and insist on the exceptionalism of Australian Jewry. One might pause to wonder what First Nations people, who are the victims of racism every day, feel about the priority given to the 120,000 well-educated, secure and mostly affluent individuals. And that last point I talked about myself yesterday, in that Indigenous people are often forgotten in this debate because they have been subject to prejudice, racism, low socioeconomic backgrounds, poor education outcomes, poor health outcomes, and so on. And yet we're spending a heck of a lot of time now talking about anti-Semitism and what are the rights, in fact, of Jewish people in this community. And we must, I think, focus back on actually what's happening in Gaza. And we need to be mindful that this push by Jillian Segal and by the government is being influenced by a specific wing of the Jewish community. It isn't speaking for the entire Jewish community. But what it will do is ensure that any conversations that any of us may have in relation to the atrocities and the genocide that is Gaza, we may find that, in fact, you and I, as I said yesterday, may find ourselves prosecuted, because that is the way in which this whole process is leaning. And there are other voices that need to be heard. So one needs to ask, is this an effort to silence you and I from talking out against what's happening in Israel and letting people know that this is not a Jewish versus a Muslim issue? This is about a particular IDF or force that's endeavouring to eradicate a whole region of their population. That this is more significant than Jewish versus Muslim or whatever. This is about an ideology which is about eradicating a group of people from the face of this earth. That is what this is about. And that, unfortunately, the appointment of someone like Segal will mean that the debate will be amplified and it will lean towards one particular side and fails to understand or recognise the rights of the Palestinian people. Let me know what you think in relation to all of this. Subscribe. This won't be the last time that I will talk about this. There'll be many other conversations in relation to this, I can assure you. I'm going to also do a post shortly in relation to Francesca Albanese and particularly a conversation that she had where she describes what genocide is. And that conversation was with James O'Brien from LBC. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.